James Hoagland.
Oh, this one works. Good morning.
Good morning.
For those of you who don't know me, make sure this doesn't fall. My name is James Hoagland, and I went to college at Goucher College in Baltimore, Maryland. I guess what they kindly refer to as second career corps member. Thank you. I know there are similarities in all our motivations for being here, but each of our stories and the events that led to the decision to join Teach for America vary. Here's a bit about mine. In the year 2000, when many of you were still in middle school, I voted in my first presidential election. I spent the better part of that year, my junior year of college, digging deeply into the issues and trying to spread the word on campus. As someone who cares about the environment, I was solidly in the Al Gore camp. I admired greatly his 20-plus years of leadership on the issue. Long before it was politically popular or even politically viable, he had the vision to see where we needed to be headed and the courage to take action in the face of the stiffest opposition and seemingly insurmountable challenges. And now this man, this leader that I admired so much, was about to be elected president. And he was. Then he was, and then maybe he was again. In the end he was, but he wasn't. Now I have to remind you of a little context. This, of course, was pre-9/11. Coming of age in the 90s, I think, was profoundly different than what many of you experienced this decade. The Cold War had ended, and we were riding an unprecedented economic e-bubble. The richest country on earth had never been richer. We had a budget surplus, if you can believe it. And the brand new internet made us all imagine an interdependent, harmonious global community. Personally, having grown up middle class in a beautiful corner of Vermont, the world's ills and injustices couldn't have seemed further away and were little more than academic for me. So when Al Gore lost that election by one vote in the Supreme Court, this election that I had invested so much of my heart and soul in, it hurt. Now, this is not intended to be a political speech. I respect greatly the variety of views and affiliations in this room. In fact, I believe that diversity of experience is our strength. But understand that from my perspective, at the time, that election was an atomic bomb. It was my first visceral experience with the bitter taste of injustice. I felt it in my belly. I was angry. I remember walking around in the woods on campus that night. As the sun came up, I resolved to turn my discontent into action. In college, I was something of a 60s file. I took classes like Protest, Legacy of the 60s, Coming of Age in Cold War America, History of the Civil Rights Movement. I was enamored of the belief that so many young people held that their actions and their love would actually change the world. I was jealous almost. I used to say to my friends, God, can you imagine what it must have been like? I mean, to really believe you had that power. At that time, I had the privilege of meeting a man named Bob Moses. Mr. Moses was here in Mississippi as early as 1961, registering voters with the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. And after the Freedom Riders went home and the news cameras and the romance of the Civil Rights Movement went away, he was still here. He only left the group and the daily threat of violence he lived under in 1966 when, under the leadership of Stokely Carmichael, the group SNCC took a turn towards the militant. Later, he started something called the Algebra Project, a national organization that reaches over 25,000 low-income kids and provides them with a college preparatory math education and the self-confidence to master it. Bob Moses not only planted the seed in my mind to come here to the Delta, he also helped transform my concept of leadership. Here was a man with tremendous and ambitious vision, whose actions were broken down into small, incremental, and strategic steps, scaffolded, if you will, one person at a time. No sweeping rhetoric, no spotlight or acclaim, just a clear vision and relentless action. Selfless, a hero. One election cycle later, after 2 years, 7 states, sleeping on many couches and even a few couches, I found myself on the losing side of another one. Working with Citizens Campaign Network and the AFL-CIO, I had spent countless hours poring over electoral and district maps. I became so obsessed with the macro mechanisms of change that when we lost, I felt that all was lost. I was deflated and defeated. I gave up. After that, I turned inward for a time, focused on myself, allowed that creeping cynicism that is so often indicative of one's mid-20s to seep in, and found myself on that slow and typical descent towards apathy. But then I thought about Bob Moses. I know he doesn't remember me. It was one lecture in one class 12 years ago, but it stuck with me. It changed me forever. It brought me here. I no longer have to imagine what it must have felt like, that unflappable faith, impossibility, that hope. I'm about to find out. We all are. That's how change happens, not on electoral maps. That's not the work. It's only the result of the work. It happens one lecture, one student, one future leader at a time. Tomorrow we celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Apollo 11 launch. When President Kennedy laid out his vision for this endeavor, it was so unimaginably ambitious, it was basically science fiction. But at the end of the decade, even as tragedies had been falling like dominoes, the vision endured. Thousands of individual actions built the ships that went to the moon, but vision carried us there. Vision fueled the faith and hope of millions, and we discovered that together there was literally nothing we could not achieve. So, as we part for a time, I know your brains may be cluttered, but I hope your hearts are full and your vision is clear. I never knew before TFA that at 29 I could feel like an old man. But look at all of you. Your youth, your energy, your optimism feeds me. And it will change the world. I see that now. I see that again. So to all of you, for the faith your vision has helped restore in my life, thank you.